Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Python 3 Crash Course. And today we're going to be going over conditional statements and then while loops. So last time we looked at, for loops, which are something very convenient, but there's a couple other things that we should know that, is something that's built into the Python language. And one of those is conditional statements. Now, a lot of times, we want to make a decision based upon, what the value of something is or the result of some comparison. And we do that through conditional statements, which would be, if some condition is true, or sometimes we want to put them together. So we want to do if a condition is true, else if a different condition is true, and then else all other cases. So if a condition is true, otherwise do this set thing. And so we'll look at those, and then we have while loops. So initially, when we were doing for loops, we used for loops to do a set amount of iterations, say print out the number of items in a grocery list. Other times it's convenient to represent things differently. So we want to do something until a condition is met. So we may not know before runtime how many times we need to run that loop. So we can do this automatically with, say, a while loop. Now, let's go ahead and open up our example for today, which will be if, else, and while.py. So we'll start out with just changing some control flow, so how our program executes. So we want to make decisions. So we'll start out with this if, else, if, or this if, else block, this conditional block. So the first one, this if, says, if this condition is true, colon, we tab over, I want you to print a is equal to 3. And then we have elif, so if this condition is false, we'll check the next condition. We check b is equal to 5. If that's true, we do b is equal to 5. And then else, that catches everything else. So everything that, if a is not 3 and b is not 5, then everything else will print all other cases. Now, it's important to know that these things are checked sequentially, which means that if a is equal to 3, we will print a is equal to 3, but we will not check any of the other cases. We simply pick whichever first case is true, and then we go ahead and drop to the very bottom of this if, else, elif, else block. So in this case, we set a equal to 5 and b equal to 3, and it will print all other cases. Now, a slightly more interesting case is if, say, b is equal to 5, and then if a is equal to 3. So in this case, both of these conditions are true, but the if actually comes first, so we'll ignore the elif and the else statement. So we'll go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and save that. Now, secondly, we have while loops. So let's talk about a couple things that we can do with while loops. So we'll go ahead and just check a condition. So we'll first have this variable I and have I equal to 0. Now in this case, we'll do kind of a trivial one, but this can be extended to be whatever we want. We can check whatever condition we really want to put in here. We just need to be careful, to make sure that the condition at some point will be satisfied. Otherwise, our program will never exit. It will give us an infinite loop. Now, sometimes this is actually something that we do want. A lot of times people will think that, oh, infinite loops are something we always avoid. But that's not entirely true. There are cases where we have something and we just want it to sit out there constantly running a program. Say if we want to monitor a sensor, we don't want to monitor for it a certain number of cycles or a certain number of periods. We want to monitor it forever until we turn it off. So in this case, while loops actually are okay, or infinite loops rather. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and increment the while loop every single time. Then in this case, we'll if I is equal to 3, we'll go ahead and print only prints on the third iteration. So this if block can only ever be executed once, and that's when I is equal to 3. Because we're incrementing every single time using this plus equals, I will only ever be 3 once. And then we'll go ahead and use a new keyword that we haven't seen before, which is continue. Now this is specific to loops, but it can be for loops as well, not just while loops. And when we do continue, this says skip all the remaining code inside of the loop and go back to the top of the loop and start the next iteration. So in this case, even though we have this print after this continue, when we execute the continue on the third iteration, we will not print right here, and we will not even do this check to see if I is equal to 7. So on every other iteration besides the third, we'll go ahead and prints on every other iteration. And then on the 7th iteration, so we'll check if I is equal to 7, and then we'll use another loop-specific keyword, which is this break. Now what this break does, or what this break is useful for in terms of loops, is this says I don't care how many iterations I have left, I'm going to get out of the loop immediately. So kind of like continue goes to the top of the loop, break will go and pretend that it's the last iteration and immediately exit the loop. So it won't execute. If there's any code below the break, it won't execute that. If there's any more iterations of the loop, it won't execute that as well. It'll just jump to the very bottom. So we'll go ahead and print out exited the loop when I is equal to I. So that I, in this case, will equal to 7 because we're calling break when I is equal to 7. So that will do it for the going over the code. Let's go ahead and run it. So Python3 on if else while.py. So here we have, we print out A is equal to 3 here. So if we go back to that original code, remember, even though that B is also equal to 5, if we have an if else block, we'll just pick the first one to print, which in this case was A is equal to 3. Even if the second one is true, we're just looking for the first true condition, and then we skip all the others. So let's go back to our prints. So here we have prints within our while loop. So in the first and second iteration, we just print out as normal prints on every other iteration. On the third, it's special. We check that if condition, and it only prints on the third iteration. It calls continue, so we don't get another prints on every other iteration. It skips immediately to the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and then on the 7th iteration, even though we said while I is I believe less than 10, or I is not equal to 10. So if this just counted up and we had no other code in there, we would get iterations 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I will eventually add to 10, and then that will be the last cycle. But in this case, because we had a break statement in here, at the 7th iteration, we don't get all the way to 10, and it just prints that exited the loop right here. Exited loop when I is equal to 7. So that's going to do it for a brief introduction to while loops. That can be a very useful thing when we don't know ahead of time how long we need to loop. As always, if we go to the Coffee Before Arch GitHub page, so github.com/coffeebeforearch, and we go to Python3 Crash Course, we have links to all the previous videos and all the related code for those videos. And then if we go to Fundamental Concepts, Loops, if else while.py, we have the example we went through today, so feel free to download this, check it out. Feel free to message me or comment or anything if you have any questions or if there's more or different content that you would like. So, like I said, as always, I'm Nick from Coffee Before Arch, and I hope you have a nice day.